Yes. Good. It's a great service. Great Yeah. That's all I read. Yeah, that's good. Give me some of those. Those are Clark's she's got on. She likes my Clark's. No, but she likes my sparkle Clark's. And these are Clark's. Well, these are Clark's and and they've got a little bit of a feel on them. So, Clark's.
More for less.
What'd you say? Yeah.
Good shoes.
Glover's, little Glover's dad, Paul's son, that's where
Thank y'all for the card.
And I remember talking to him at the end. He said, yeah, he was either always preaching or singing.
I've done him much in the morning. Yeah.
No, we were
Now,
behind you.
behind you.
Got him points. Yeah.
Oh, you say something?
So are you still working at the church?
Yeah, so I haven't
Then
done
you take me behind your
Good morning.
Good morning.
Test. Test. We're there. We're in. Good morning. What's the snack today, Andy?
Protein bar.
Protein bar.
Keep me alive.
Is it strawberry?
Yes. Smell it.
That's a good choice. I'm a fan of that.
I'll guard it.
I'm not coming after it. I promise. It's okay. I know but it's a regular wrapping.
Yeah.
You don't have the glasses case today?
No, I didn't bring my peanut butter and crackers.
Oh. I mean, for y'all that weren't here that day, I learned a pro move from Andy right there. He took his old glasses cases and he puts 3 peanut butter crackers that he creates from home just to make sure. That's right, so they don't get crushed. Because it's a problem when your peanut butter crackers get crushed. And you get the full-size crackers, not those little, like, disappointment size. You get the real ones. So.
And you don't get a pocket full of peanut butter.
Which is also a problem. I don't know, though. Peanut butter, I could, reach in later and be like, oh, saving that for later. So. Good morning. Glad y'all are here. Thanks for coming. So we are still doing We Who Doubt. So any takers on last week? Anybody want to recap what we did last week? Awesome. Just like high school. So we talked about this, and this is kind of our overarching quote that I want to bring up each week as we start looking into this. Henry Drummond gave a sermon way back in the late 1800s. But Christ never failed to distinguish between doubt and unbelief. Doubt is can't believe, unbelief is won't believe. Doubt is honest, unbelief is obstinacy. Doubt is looking for light, unbelief is content with darkness. So the purpose of this is it's okay to doubt. Doubt can be good, and doubt can produce good things in us. It's not inherently bad, even though sometimes we feel it is, or we feel that we shouldn't doubt. It's okay that doubt occurs. Unbelief is a problem. Unbelief is not okay. You have to choose to believe and wrestle with God on some of these things to make it work. And then we talked about when does doubt arise, and we talked about 2 a.m., or when circumstances arise, more or less. So the past 2 that we have looked at so far has been John the Baptist, and John's doubt was when he was stuck in prison right before his head was taken from him. Was the first one we looked at. And last week we looked at Thomas, and Thomas gets the wonderful nickname of Doubting Thomas. But we had talked about when he was away from the disciples or the other apostles, and Jesus appeared, and then he was not there when Jesus appeared the first time. And the grand lesson we learned there was don't skip church, right? Because when you miss church, you miss Jesus, and that's not good. So glad y'all are here today. But then there's this sweet little verse in Jude, that I think is a good reminder for us as we talk about these things. Be merciful to those who doubt, right? Hut talked about that this morning when it comes to confession and sin. We jump real fast to the judgment phase instead of the forgiveness phase, right? The forgiving phase. Same with those who doubt. Be merciful to those, because if we're being honest, we probably struggle with doubt as well somewhere along the way. So I want to start with this to get the ball rolling. Let's think about this for a minute. And this is a really weird question, but I'm curious how you'd answer it because it'll help answer the rest of the lesson today. If you were going to a funeral and knew you had the power to raise someone from the dead, what emotions would you experience at the funeral? Excitement. Why so? Okay, so you knew you were about to do something that everybody's going to be like, oh, this is good. Like, this is good. This is not bad in any way. This is good. Okay? Good? What else? Anybody else? Huh? Doubt? Okay, why so, if you don't mind? Wow. That leads really well into what we're talking about. Yeah, so maybe I should phrase the question. Let's say you are a divine being that knows the answer to that question. Let's say you know it's good or not good that you should raise that question, because that's a really insightful answer. As a human, if I'm raising this person from the dead, but they just got through sickness, what am I bringing them back to, right? Or are they in a better place because of our belief that they are with Jesus now? That's better than here, right? So really the heart of this is not to dive into that realm, but that's a great question. But if you knew you were bringing them back and it was going to be good and it was all great, what general behaviors or emotions would you expect to see from that person or yourself if you could raise somebody from the dead? I would agree with excitement. Like, I can do this. Or I just sit there with a calm resolve. Everybody else around me is sad, and I just be like, no, we're good. Like, y'all all cry or whatever. It's cool. I'll let you have your moment, but this is all going to be fixed in a minute, so everybody just simmer down, right? You might have that feeling. Okay, we're going to look at that today. So thank you for stealing all my thunder. Just kidding. So today's doubt, we're looking at Martha and Mary's doubt. So last week, as we talked about Thomas, the grand moment of Thomas's doubting is preluded by Thomas saying, yeah, let's go back with Jesus so we can die with him. But nobody calls him courageous Thomas. Nobody's like, hey, he's the one that said I can go be with Jesus when he dies. Everybody's like, nah, he's the one that doubted, which is really unfair, but that's what we do with doubters. We brand them. So I wanted to look at Mary and Martha so we could look at the story of Lazarus being raised, because that's when Jesus was going back to Jerusalem, or that area was when he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. And so keep that in mind. So if we're going to re-ask that question in a minute. If you were Jesus and knew you were about to raise Lazarus from the dead, what emotions should you be experiencing, or would you think you would experience right before you did that? Because the Bible paints an interesting picture of Jesus' emotions when this happens, and there's got to be a purpose. So we're in John chapter 11, if you have your Bibles. If you don't, it'll be on the screens, but I'll give you a minute to get there. We're in John chapter 11. We'll be in 17 through 46. So this is a lot of Scripture. I'm going to read through the story first, and then we'll go back and we'll dive into it, and we'll ask questions and we'll talk about it. But I want to tell the story in its entirety before we start framing our opinions, okay? As we do this, though, and as we read the story to kind of get you thinking, look for Martha, look for Mary, look for the responses they both had, similar or different. Look for where they might have experienced doubt, and look for Jesus' response to them. Okay? So those are the relationships we're looking for here. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles away from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, bad grammar, God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Yes, Lord, she replied, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world. After she said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went out to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could he not open the eyes of the blind man, have kept this man from dying? Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by the time there is a bad odor, for he's been there for 4 days. Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you'll see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe you sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary had seen what Jesus did, believed in him, but some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. All right. So John says at the end of his gospel, he says that he writes everything in his gospel for a purpose. And that purpose is that you may believe Jesus is the Christ, right? That's the purpose. So why did he include this story? What's the purpose here? Go ahead. Same, yep, to know he's the Christ. But there's a very specific reason. Like, why do we generally point to the lesson we pull out of this story? What are we targeting at?
Power over death.
Okay, power over death. Yes, absolutely. Which is important. Why?
Without that power over death, what's the point of it all?
Well, absolutely, yeah. Without the power of death, what's the point? Good. Anybody else that claimed to be the Messiah have this power? That's important to note. There's only one that was Messiah that had the power over death, right? So it's very important. Oh, same thing? Okay, yeah. So generally, from a teacher's perspective, when we pull out this story, we are trying to show the humanity and the deity of God in one setting. That is the grand lesson that we see here, is we see the humanity of Jesus and we see God's divine nature because he can tell Lazarus to come out of the grave, right? And that's vitally important, but I read an article from Timothy Keller that I thought was really interesting. When you think of Jesus as human and as God, how do you generally interpret that or envision that in your mind's eye? Like in my head, I was always like, oh, it's like a 50-50 split. Like this half of him is God and this half of him is man, right? But that's not really the way this works, okay? He is all God all the time, and he is all man all the time at the same time. And we see that in this story here, which is really important for us to get to as we go along. So, what was Martha's doubt in this story? How would we classify it? What would we say? Say it again. He could have kept him from dying, right? What was Mary's doubt? Same thing. You could have kept him from dying. They both said the exact same thing. We're going to look at it. Both sisters said the exact same words to Jesus when he showed up. You could have kept him from dying if you were here. So in Martha's case, let's look at Martha's part of the story a little bit. So here is her response. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. What's her doubt? What's she struggling with here?
What God will give her.
What God will give her, right? And when, right? When he will give it and how he will give it. See, Martha is the intellectual side of the equation. Her brain is in full gear. Okay, she knows what's going on. Now, what do we know about Martha previous stories? We're not going to look at them today. But who was Martha by trade? She's the practical one. Remember when Jesus showed up at the house originally and they're sitting there and Mary sits at his feet and wants to learn from him? But what's Martha doing? She's taking care of business. She is serving. She is taking care of the house. She's taking care of the people. She is the practical one that gets stuff done. Whereas Mary is the more emotional one, the one that is learning, that has her heart into everything that's going on, right? So Martha here is, but I know that even now you will give whatever, God will give you whatever you ask. Okay? You think she believed that? Or do you think she said it?
I think she wanted to believe it, if she didn't.
Okay, she wanted to believe it even if she didn't. Do we do that?
All the time.
What are things we want to believe and we say them, but here we're not so sure?
You know, they said if he was there, he could have saved him. He doesn't even have to be there. I mean, there's been previous stories where he healed people and he wasn't even there.
Right, right. If you were here, right? So what's that context? What are they? What's the human limitation they are putting on Jesus?
That he has to physically be there.
Yeah, physical space, right? We do that all the time, don't we? We put God in our human box that he has to fit the way we think he should look or be or do or whatever, right? And that's exactly what Martha and Mary are doing here. And the thing I love about this story is Martha and Mary were very much the ones, if that comes back up in a minute. I had trouble with it. There you go. They were like, Jesus was close with this family. Like he loved them. Like they got one-on-one interaction with the Savior, and they still struggled with Jesus had to be here. It should comfort us greatly that I have not physically like held hands with Jesus or been right around him, and I still have that problem. I still think Jesus has to be here to do this, or I put him in my box the way he fits. Yes, ma'am.
I perceived that she trusted that God would give whatever Jesus asked, but not necessarily what she would ask.
Okay, excellent point. Whatever you ask Jesus, he will give. Okay? You want to add to that?
Do I need to?
No, I will.
Wasn't she hoping that Jesus
him to ask.
How often do we do that? Hey, Jesus, I need you to ask God for this. Right? I mean, I do. Hey, Jesus, I need you to ask God to pay this bill. Like, 'cause I don't know where the money's at right now. You know, my kid got in 2 car wrecks in 6 months. I need money for the 3rd car because that's how valuable it is that he drives, because I don't want to drive him anymore. But it's difficult, right? We do that a lot.
The doubt that they had, of course, came from lack of knowledge, but also from the thousands of years of history. Things that were answered that, sure, they made it through the desert, but it took 40 years.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, there's a history with the Jews, right? Of like, yeah, we made it, but it took forever, or this roundabout way, or things like that.
A lot of people died.
Yeah, sure. Which ultimately was whose fault? Theirs. Like, they're the ones that kept screwing it up, right? Even Moses didn't get to enter because Moses screwed up at the end, right? So oftentimes that doubt is perpetrated by our lack of faith or our issue in trying to solve the problem. We could dive into Abraham and Sarah, right? And we could be like, oh, well, God gave this promise, but they're like, no, we'll fix it. Go get Tabor. We'll take care of this right now.
And back on to
Right.
Jesus, he was all God and he was all man, but in his moments with them and seeing their sorrow, that had to have an effect on his man feelings. It was just, he had to cry.
Exactly.
He had to feel sorry for them because he knew what they were suffering and feeling and hurting.
Right. Which is why this story is so important for us to know. Because it truly helps us understand that of all the people that have claimed to have been a Messiah across the course of time, and there have been hundreds of them that said they're the Messiah, this is the only one where God came down. All other leaders of religions, what's their purpose? Other religious leaders, say it again?
We lifted up.
Yeah, Islam or Buddhism or any other religion you want to study, the main leader or prophet's job is to point you to God, right? But in Christianity, what happened?
He came down.
He came down to save us from ourselves. So it's not God's over there. No, God is here now to fix it.
I found it interesting, kind of his reaction to Mary or to Martha and then Mary. Martha, it was almost like, yeah, if I'd have been here, maybe whatever, just suck it up, buttercup, kind of. But then when Mary is there and, he had seemed to me to show more compassion. Maybe.
Okay? Yeah, we're going to get in there. Let's finish Martha and we'll get there, I promise. So Jesus responds to Martha, your brother will rise again. But Martha said, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day. What did Jesus say? Your brother will rise again. Who put the qualifying condition on the response? Martha did, right?
He means now and she means later.
Yeah. Don't we do that all the time? We know what Jesus meant. I know what you meant, Jesus. You meant later. Instead of stopping to think, hold on, what could truly happen? Because, and maybe not you, maybe me, because I am so confined to what I see in the physical realm, I can't always think or see the spiritual side of how this works, right? And Martha did not know that Jesus had a great purpose in doing this act. Now, what is, from Jesus' angle, Jesus is going to raise him from the dead. Why?
To show that he is the one.
To show he's the one. But what is this single event going to begin? It's going to begin his death. Okay, this is the road to the cross starting here. Well before, a few weeks before the Passion Week, a few weeks before the Passover, this is the journey that will get him led to where he will have to die. And he knows it. Okay, he knows that. So, Jesus said to her, I'm the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? What's the significance of Jesus' question?
Reflect forward to his own death and resurrection.
Sure.
And don't you think Jesus didn't do anything accidentally or half-heartedly or just like, okay, might as well. He picked this family to be close to because he knew how close the tie with
Sure, I believe so. That's that divinity, right? That deity of him. He knows things and knows time. One of the cool, I don't remember who did it, Veggie Tales or somebody had this puppet show. Great for adults and kids alike, honestly. It's not just good for kids. But they talk about, I can't think of the term. Why was there a 400-year gap between the last book of the Old Testament and then when Jesus came? Well, Rome happened. And what did Rome do? They built roads. They made things accessible that the gospel could just spread like crazy through the Roman Empire. Whereas before that, travel was difficult. God knows when the right time is to do what to make it work.
One thing we need to be careful of is Martha's statement was one of tremendous understanding and faith. Old Testament taught resurrection, but not with 20 centuries of Christian theology. And so what she stated was a tremendous faith, belief in Jesus. She just didn't know the timetable that Jesus had done.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why we go back to Martha is the intellectual one. Her brain is in full gear. For her to say, look, I know he'll come back at the resurrection, that shows her understanding of her faith as a Jew. She knew things, and she's a woman, which is interesting because they weren't educated as well as the males were, right? So the fact that Jesus has picked two women to unveil this is a sign of his deity as well, that Martha was an extremely educated woman at the time, and a woman of faith because she shared that, right? Excellent point. Hurry up. I'm pretty sure I turned off the go to sleep function, but it didn't listen to me. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was, so we're going into Mary now, so we switched off Martha, so Jesus responded to Martha with a question. So he responded to the intellectual with questions. If you're the intellectual type, Jesus will engage you intellectually. He will ask you and get you thinking to get you to faith to where you need to be. But now we turn to Mary. Mary is more of the emotional type, we'll see. So when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. So we get back to her response was exactly the same as Martha's. If you had been here, right? So she's stuck just like Martha is, of if you were here, you could have done something, instead of the belief that he could have done it from wherever he was, right? So they had to be here where they were. So we go back to both of them. So if we look at Martha's doubt and we look at Mary's doubt, what is Mary's doubt in this case? Is hers doubt? I like to look at it this way.
I don't think it was in her own thinking.
I agree. I think Martha struggled with, when will Jesus work? When are you going to get this done? I want to know when this will be done, right? But I think Mary's is more prompted by grief, right? And when we get in moments of grief, doubt can creep in real easy when we're grieving the loss of something or someone. That doesn't have to be physical death. That could be, the turning away of somebody that's like, hey, come back to the family. I know one family where the son is like, I'm no longer talking to y'all anymore ever again, almost prodigal situation. And that father's heart is broken because he's like, I want my son back. And no matter what they do, we continue to pray, but it's just kind of there, right? The grief introduces doubt into a lot of things. So I don't know that Mary's is as much doubt as we normally think about it, but grief is really important to track when that time happens. So, Tim Keller coined this, and I thought this was really interesting. Jesus responded to Martha's with what we call the ministry of truth. He provided her the truth of how it works and what it is. I am the resurrection. I am the life. Not later, not somewhere else. It's me here, now. Right? He responded to Mary with the ministry of tears. Do we need both of those?
Definitely.
Why so?
Without either one of them, we're missing something.
No.
We're short.
Well, go ahead.
It's Hebrews that talks about Jesus is able to sympathize. He's been where we are. He's able to relate to what it's like to be a human. He can sympathize with our weaknesses.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah. The great high priest that can sympathize with you and me because he was here and he lived this, right? I am an intellectual by trade for the most part. although there are moments I've been known to shed a tear or two. Mostly every time the Cowboy season begins, I start to cry because I have great hope, and it just disappoints with utter failure. But no, there are moments where tears enter, and Jesus can respond to both. And Jesus will respond to both. So we go back to that question of when we raise somebody from the dead, should I do this or should I not? Jesus knows when we need truth, and Jesus knows when we need tears. And he knows the difference between the two when we don't even know at all, right? And I believe he's given us the Spirit that as we sit with each other, the Spirit intercedes and tells us when's the time to share truth and when's the time to sit and shed tears with somebody, right? Because we have to do both. It's not okay to sit there and just cry with somebody and be like, oh, it'll be okay when they need truth. You got to change the way you're living. You got to step away from that. But it's also not okay when they are in an emotional state of grief to say, here's the truth, right? Nothing will be heard. Tom talked about that on Wednesday night in his series. You know, he lost 2 young children, very, very young, and people are like, it'll be okay. And he's like, yeah, don't tell me that right now. I don't need to hear that now. He knows that. He knows the truth, but he needs tears, right? He needs the ministry of tears from Jesus, not the other.
The tears shows the love.
Yeah. Yeah, the tears show the love. They show the love. So let's keep going here. So when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and trouble. So we go back to our question we asked earlier. Why was Jesus emotional? Jesus knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. He knew this was all going to be okay in a matter of, before the day was done, this would be fine. Why was he emotional?
Because he was so closely connected with them, personally.
Yeah.
He loved them.
Loved them, closely connected. Yeah. Sympathizing, right? Yeah, sure.
And he saw a picture of his own death coming.
And he knew what this was starting.
Does your heart not break when you see someone else's heart break?
The comment was, does your heart not break when you see someone else's heart broken? Yeah, sure, right? And this is more testimony to Jesus was man at the same time he was God. And should be valuable for us that in our moments of doubt, when we struggle and we're grieving, he'll get down and cry with us. He's not too good for crying with us when the time happens, right?
How much of it is remorse that he could have ended it so much sooner?
Okay, question was posed. I'm not answering. How much of it was remorse because he could have ended it sooner?
Oh, it had to happen. That's why he waited.
Yeah.
His fault anyway.
Is Jesus feeling fault or guilt here? Is that the question, kind of?
Something like that.
Maybe?
I don't know if that's the right word.
Maybe.
Maybe it's sadness that it had to happen, that they had to be hurt. He knew it was for a greater purpose, but just like at his death, he was sad that he was going to have to go through those things, but he still knew that had to happen.
So it's funny. The question is emotional for a reason. Number one, he's sad because we know he cries. But then when we get down to verse 38, so he's at the tomb now. The English translates to Jesus was once more deeply moved. The Greek word here is more indignation. I misspelled that, sorry. Or anger. It's not sadness per se that the emotion he's feeling. It's frustration, anger. Why would he be experiencing anger at this moment?
One thing that the world's not supposed to experience is death. Yes, Satan and we cooperated to bring it into our spirit experience, but it wasn't supposed to happen. And Jesus is looking right down the throat of what shouldn't be to begin with.
Oh,
And that
yeah.
had to hurt.
Yeah. So if we go back to the beginning of John, it says Jesus was the Word and it was created through the Word, right? So creation was done with him. He was there when God created. And he knows what it was supposed to be like. And this is not the way it's supposed to be, right? People are not supposed to be dying like this. The world was supposed to be different, so his frustration is coming out. Yes.
I think Jesus was angry because now we see the power that Satan and sin has over us. And we have no control over it.
Sure. Yeah. The power Satan truly has is on display in death, right? And Jesus is like, I'm tired of that, and I'm tired of y'all thinking that's the way it is. I'm the resurrection and the life. Good. Good. You want to add? I don't want to stop. You want to add to? I kind of cut you off.
No,
Okay, thank you.
what did he die of?
What did he die of? Who? Jesus? Crucifixion?
No.
I got that one. Lazarus? What did Lazarus die of? I don't know the answer to that one. Yeah, illness. Illness. Sick. He wasn't old. It said illness. So
So the anger had nothing to do.
Oh, great. The Chosen says appendicitis. There's a doctor on there somewhere.
So the anger or the indignation was not around why he died or what he died of.
Okay? Yeah.
We don't even know what he died of.
Yeah. Okay, good point. So Jesus' anger or frustration is not in how or why Lazarus died. It's in the fact that he's dead. And I think it's put beautifully, that this is not the way it's supposed to be. And Jesus is just frustrated and groaning at how creation has turned out, and now he has to set it right. Which also, I think he's staring the coming thing, the coming events are in his mind and in his heart, and that is also his anger and frustration of he has to go through with this, which in any human, if I knew I was having to sacrifice myself, and not just like, okay, just end it, lethal injection or make it quick, soldier's death kind of thing. No, I've got to be tortured. That would create frustration, right? One back there, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if it had anything to do with the verse before where some of the Jews are almost blaming him and saying, well, couldn't he have stopped this, if he had been here.
Okay, 37. Let me see if I can get there real fast. But some of them came and said, could not he who have opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Okay, so with some of his frustration from the people who are like, look, you could have done this, but you chose not to. Perhaps. Maybe. Carl, you have a thought?
I'm not sure that anything angers me more than when somebody hurts somebody I love. And here we see where Satan is hurting people that Jesus loves.
Yeah, it does say at the very beginning of this section, verse 4, that Jesus loved Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. And I think it's important to understand, as humans, do we have people we are more closely connected to than others? Absolutely. There are people that I jive with better than I do with others. There are some people that it's like, look, I love you, but I do not want to hang out with you much, right? And that's human. Jesus was no different. Jesus had people that were just closer to him for whatever reasons than others, just like any human would have. And this was one of his close family-knit group that died there.
I mean, he also had upset because people didn't trust him. They doubted him that he could handle this situation.
Sure. So how much is it you're sad that Satan has killed Lazarus, but now you're also sad of Mary and Martha because, come on. Y'all seen some of the things I've done. You know the things I can do, and you don't trust me yet. And the frustration of, I'm trying to teach you, I am the way and the resurrection. You've got to get this through your heads. And it's a slow grind. As an educator, I feel that. It is so frustrating when you teach something and you're like, nope, wrong again. Let's do it again. This is try number 6. Here we go. Maybe on 7. But man, it gets frustrating after a while when you teach that fact and it just rubs you wrong, right?
Well, and now he's getting closer to his crucifixion, so this is crunch time. You got to get this now.
Yeah.
I'm running out of time here.
Yeah. He's at the end of the journey, right? So he's got to get this done in the next few weeks. So I need people to do this to make this work. And this is important because I think the doubt we encounter is we still doubt, is Jesus God? We still doubt that. People doubt that. The world still doubts, is Jesus God and who he is? And so I always love this quote. I'm sorry, that's really small. I'll read it as fast as I can. This is from C.S. Lewis. It actually came from a preacher before C.S. Lewis, but C.S. Lewis made it real famous. But he said, I'm trying here to prevent anyone from saying the really foolish thing that people often say about Jesus. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who is merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on the level of a poached egg, or else he'd be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else he would be the devil of hell. Oh, I'll skip the line there. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else This madman is something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about him being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. What do y'all think about this one? Y'all have heard this before, yes? This is in Mere Christianity, super famous apologetics argument that people make and talk about. I actually found a guy that said this is the worst argument of all time, and it was an interesting read. But basically, this is what's known as the trilemma, is what it's called. So Jesus was one of three things. Number one, he was a deceiver, and he lied to everybody, and he knew he was doing it. That's option one. Option two, he deceived himself, so therefore he was crazy, he was a lunatic. Or number three, he was Lord, he was divine. Those are the three options. Thought?
The first one, he was just a liar. He would have to be a lunatic because he died for the lie.
Yeah, this one is hard to wrap your mind around because don't go to the cross if you're just lying to people, right? Liars don't generally do that. They don't suffer pain for that sake. Okay? So let's look at this. How does this happen in today's society a little bit? How do people argue that Jesus wasn't God? What are some famous arguments have you ever encountered or talked to people? Jesus was a good guy, but I don't know that he was God. I don't know that he was Christ. Like, what arguments do people generally say today to refute that? Okay, go. Validity of the New Testament. People want to argue, that book's not real. How do you know that was written in the right time and we can trust what it is? Okay? Miracles were not real. That didn't happen. Lazarus was in a coma for 4 days. That's how he came out. They've got justifications for it. They do. Which medically you could prove that 4 days could make it work. Or stones were under the water Jesus was walking on. You just couldn't see them. Forget the whole storm facet and the waves and all that. There were stones there that, were making this happen. Or bottom line is just pure selfishness. People just don't want to, because if Jesus is God and he is who he says he is, what does that require?
Obedience.
Submission.
For you to change and to submit, right? And I don't want to do that. So sometimes doubt is a dodge. I doubt that because I don't want to commit to follow that way, right? So how do we combat these arguments real fast? Number one, the New Testament is incredibly reliable. Dead Sea Scrolls, archaeology. We went to Washington, D.C. with my family a few weeks ago, and they have the Museum of the Bible there. Really fascinating, really fascinating museum that we saw. They have the best VBS setup of all time, so just go see where Jesus lived. We need to recreate that. I don't know how we do, but it was legit. But they had just all these historical artifacts that if you want to argue the Bible, that's fine, but why do we accept any other historical document as true when we only have one copy, but when we have millions of this copy, we want to argue it? Because we don't want to believe it because it makes us change, right? Okay. Number two, the miracles were not real. Understand something about miracles. Number one, they're very, very rare, and they were done for a very specific purpose. In this case, Lazarus raising from the dead, yeah, he's for 4 days, but what was the purpose of Jesus doing this? To show his divinity. There was a very specific spiritual purpose in this miracle. Jesus walking on the water. There was 11 other eyewitnesses to this account and Peter's own account of what he did, but the purpose was to show his control over nature to his apostles, right? It wasn't just done because he's like, I'm going to perform this miracle. Hey, wait, stop. There's a purpose to the miracles that people don't want to account for. And then selfishness. So no other religion can claim the fact that Jesus was raised from the dead. What are other religious leaders or messiahs that have said, I'm the Messiah, that turn out to be false? And this has happened as recent as, our lifetimes. Muhammad is one, yeah, back in the day. How about David Koresh? Remember that guy? Sure, that guy said he was Messiah. And where is David Koresh? Dead. He is not alive, right? Jim Jones was another real popular one. Remember that guy took all those people down to South America and they drank the Kool-Aid? That's where you get that phrase, and they all died in a mass suicide, so all the people that believed that one ended up dead, not just him. Marshall Applewhite. There are tons of people that have claimed to be the Messiah, but can't do what Jesus did in any way. All right? And that's the grand difference between Christianity and anything else. Is either Jesus was or Jesus wasn't. And if he wasn't, Paul talks about that in Corinthians, then we are to be pitied above all men because we believe the lie. Right? But it's not a lie. That's the way it goes. So what's the real purpose of this story? Therefore, many of the Jews who come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went and told the Pharisees what he had done. This is when it all begins. That the Pharisees, after this, you read a few more verses down, the Pharisees say, from this point forward, we need to capture him and kill him. Because why?
Jealousy.
Because they knew he was God now, and they didn't want to admit it. Because he raised somebody, not that was like sick, going by like a child that nobody got to see. Remember, Jesus healed the child and he just took his apostles and this and that. No, this was like on public display. And it's really important we miss in there, Jesus did it at where he did because there were several Jews from Jerusalem that were there to comfort Mary and Martha. There was a large crowd that Jesus did this in front of on purpose to prove who he was, right?
Scripture says that they didn't want to accept him because if they did, then they were concerned about their nation and their status in life. He said, the Scripture says the Romans was going to come take our place from us, I guess.
Yeah, people in power have a hard time submitting to Jesus because they don't want to give up their power, right? And this is the grand crux for people that are leaders. As a leader, humility has to remain. That we are not truly in charge, Jesus is, and we have to seek that guidance. And we will make mistakes along the way, right? But I'll end with this, and we ended with this last week. Henry Drummond put in his sermon, and I love it. The impression of God is kept up by experience, not by logic. Logically, you can't explain everything Jesus did. But the experience of who he is will help us keep identifying how we should follow. Mary, experiencing the tears with Jesus, produced her to then get the jar and wash his feet right before Jesus is crucified the next day, right? It propels them on to something. So thanks for your comments today. Thanks for being here. We'll be back next week, and we're going to look at Mary Magdalene next week because I think she was the first one that became the first Christian, so to speak. So we're going to look at her next week. Have a great week. Thank you all very much. Take care. You're welcome.